Fat Albert here has a worldwide fan club. He's a very popular fella. Built by Lockheed in America, they've sold something like 2,000 C-130s to over 50 countries. Now, if I was a car salesman, I'd say the C-130 doesn't look much like a Rolls-Royce, but it's very versatile and dependable. Goes for thousands of miles in between services, you know. And talking about versatility, they've come up with about 40 different civilian and military versions. And this plane stretches. They just add a bit more on the back. And they reckon the Hercules, though it's been around for years, could well go on to the 1990s, maybe even the 21st century. Do you know, it's 3 years ago this month that Britain retook that what it regarded as its own. The Falkland Islands, 4,500 square miles of mountains and bleak boggy land bordering Antarctica. That battle, of course, was won with much sweat, toil and blood. And the battle for Britain, which this station in Wiltshire at RAF Lyneham fought and won, is continuing. We're here to pay tribute to the plane they call the workhorse of the Royal Air Force, and whose pilot's nickname Fat Albert, the Hercules. The Falklands is regarded as the plane's finest hour, and there are some who say it's doubtful whether without that plane the battle to retake the Falklands could ever have happened.
.164 to Ascension and Stanley. The aim of the exercise is straight freight resupply. We're looking for 54 hours flying. I think they're going to go for roll 17 Charlie now. Is that right, Roger?
Yes.
Yeah. Because it looks like a double or a triple pallet in the back. Also, the navigator here, he's got his route check down as far as Dakar for his annual test. No doubt he'll pass that. And we've also been nominated to be the 3rd anniversary press run for landing at Stanley. And to that end we need to have 6 seats extra. Michael Thomas. Normal being closed at Dakar, flying suits are okay at Ascension and Stanley. And because we get into Dakar at what, 23 something, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 23.
Yeah. Perhaps we'd like to organise some light refreshment for us when we arrive, because the restaurants will be shut.
Do you not know what the weather conditions are like at Stanley at the moment? Okay. Ed, what sort of a journey are we looking forward to then in terms of distance and time?
Well, we probably find the trip down to Dakar and Ascension quite pleasant. They're quite short days, in the order of 8 and 5 hours respectively. But then after Ascension, it'll take between 11 hours and 14 hours, depending on the wind and various vagaries of the day. And obviously that's a long, long way. It's also made slightly longer by the fact that we have to do in-flight refuelling halfway, top up to full tanks. And that slows us down by probably about an hour, because our tank obviously weighs an awful lot more than us at that time. We overtake him and have to wait till the rendezvous point.
You've been making this journey now for 3 years. How does making the trip now compare to at the height of the crisis?
Well, I think we've become quite used to it. I think we develop a new seat for sitting down purposes. It doesn't get any shorter, and you never get used to it. It's quite remarkable. Every trip seems as long as the one before. I think probably, though, we are more proficient at it, and absorbing the vagaries of any one day causes less of a crisis in general.
How many trips are being made now compared to at the height of the
We
crisis?
started off looking at after the first landing on the 24th of June. We started landing at Stanley. There were 2 a day then, 7 days a week, involving half the Victor tankers in the Royal Air Force to give us fuel. And the Hercules had sufficient fuel on board when they arrived at Stanley to go all the way back to Ascension, because at that time it was only 4,000 feet long, and there was no way of getting in other than really visually or by using the navigator's radar or whatever. And so often, perhaps twice a week, an aircraft go all the way down for 12 hours and then come all the way back to Ascension Island, a 24-hour round trip. So that's changed a lot now. There's radar and so on at the other end at Stanley. And the actual air bridge task has dropped 2 a week, which we fly all the way through from Lyneham in one go. That's partly due to the garrison concept, where the troops go down there for 6 months or thereabouts and live there, so they need less air support. And of course the wide-body jet hopefully will take the burden.
So you'll still be carrying freight?
Yeah, for the foreseeable future, because there isn't at the moment any proposal to use a wide-body freight aircraft, and the civil aircraft are designed to either take people through passenger doors or a thing called an LD1 container through a freight door. So anything bigger than an LD1 container can't go in the aeroplane. Now tomorrow we'll be taking it down with some rotor blades, which are obviously far too big to go into an ordinary civil aeroplane.
I'm told that crews have great affection for Hercules aircraft. Is this true, and if so, why?
Well, I think you're right, yeah. I think it's partly because we spend an awful lot of our life in them. And also it's a very, very serviceable aeroplane, and it's very good fun to fly. It's a very nice aeroplane to fly, physically fly. And the only drawback, I think, probably, is its noise level. We are all going gradually deaf, but it means we can afford hi-fi commensurate with our hearing.
I think it's an excellent aeroplane. A little bit limited in my range of experience. It's the only airplane I've worked on. I've been on it for 6 years, but having done 6 years on a Herc, I don't think I'd like to work on anything else. I've flown on Pumas and PC-10s, etc. And a Herc is basically a workhorse. It'll do anything you ask of it, and sometimes more than you ask of it. It's basically a superb airplane.
Well, you're the guy in charge of the freight the plane is carrying, and someone also described the Hercules as being like a flying Pickford's removal wagon. Is that the kind of way you look at it?
Yes, but a little bit more technical than that. Sometimes it seems to have elastic sides. You keep pouring freight into this thing and it just disappears. And so what can you say about it? It does its job, and it does it very well.
Moving into the rest of you, any thoughts on the plane, why you like it?
I think you can say it's probably one of the most adaptable aircraft ever built. And still today, you can cover any environment and put the Hercules in that environment, and it'll fit in and do a very good job, as you've just seen with Ethiopia. And we're talking about extremes of climates now, so it's a particularly adaptable aircraft.
That's the point, Henry. We're going from somewhere around the equator, Ascension, right down to midwinter, aren't we, on the Falklands?
That's right. And obviously there are some aircraft which couldn't manage couldn't cope with the change in climate. But the Hercules is particularly good at this type of job.
Someone told me that this is one of the longest flights in the world, one of the longest continuous flights. How important is it that you get on together as a team because you're spending so much time together?
Very important. We're living on a flight deck, really. I think the longest leg will be about 13 hours. And in noisy conditions, quite often you don't really leave your seat. So it's quite a relaxed atmosphere on the flight deck, and jokes are quite abundant. But it's a very relaxed atmosphere, and you obviously have to get on with the crew. And we fly with each other quite often, so we know each other very well.
Are there any Hercules jokes?
Well, there are, not many of which I'd like to repeat.
We'll pick them up later in the trip. Thank you very much. We're not far off from a most amazing journey, and a long one too. From the heart of the Wiltshire countryside, here's Lyneham. We're flying down to Dakar, that's on the West African coast, then into the Atlantic to Ascension Island, which I reckon is about 8 degrees off the equator, so quite warm, and then with mid-air refuelling, this haul of 13 hours down to Stanley Airport in the Falklands. Well, of course, Mount Pleasant Airport is open now, so civilian wide-bodied jet flights are going into Stanley, or into the Falklands anyway, but freight is still carried by the Hercules, and 2 of those flights are made each week. We're on one of them. With me is John on camera, Tony on sound, and I must admit that this chap's longest flight is 7 hours across to New York, and God knows what state he'll be in when he gets to Stanley. But I hope you're going to enjoy the flight with us and seeing what the Hercules and the men of Lyneham are up to. Not exactly super club class, is it? But there again, as they keep telling me, the Hercules is designed to carry freight. It's just a great big lorry of the air, really. Oh, let's just get down. There's absolutely no room for seats, because cargo is what they stick in what is a 41-foot-long container, about 9 feet high, about 10 feet wide. Where they stretch Hercules, they add about 15 feet on, and obviously can carry even more freight. We're spending our journey sitting in seats like this, with the odd porthole to have a look at the Atlantic Ocean beneath us. You can't smoke back here. You can't hear much, really, either. Oh, there's another thing. I asked, where's the loos? I was told you're standing by it. Where, I said? Here, they said. No.
Okay, to go check. Confirm. Engine loading. Okay, take off information, brief, then standard start, stops check, standard board procedures, and airborne emergencies. Anything absolutely dire, we'll leg it off to prize naught. Safe dumping fuel and coming back in here. Questions at all? Don't forget. Out the engine. And off the left. Okay, 999 on the captains is minus 10. Minus 10 on the goes. And 0 on the nose. Okay, start calling. Ground has got 4164. 4164, ground. 4164, we're on bay 26 with 10 persons on board. 8 is Oscar, copy, requesting star clearance. 4164. Complete, and nose will checked in stowage. Ground fuel panel checked. Neutral panel. Is set. Radios on, first start. Radios on, we're at box 1 with ground, this is our standby. This is star clearance. We have altimeters have been compared chocks. Ready to move, that's first chock 4.5. Navigation and condition lights. Set red. Farguard extinguisher. In position. GDC. Clear to start, props are clear. Starting now. Thank you. He's on. Orchestra, please good. Go. Engine, low bar set. Hello, nose. Ground order all forward north. Normal set. Flaps right now. Aligned to flaps. Number 3 engine. Number 3 clear. Number 3 engine. 3 now. Ignition. Oil pressures, hydraulic pressure. DC pass and checked about. Capacity system set standby. Clear number 4 engine. 4 clear. Number 4 engine. 4 now. PTIG 832. Number 4 generator on. DC panel set. Ignition panel set. Ground conditions. Clear number 2. Number 2 clear. Start number 2 engine. 2 now. Number 2 generator on.
I've noticed people get up very early here on Ascension. Jeff, why is that?
This is the early morning departure time. We leave here at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you see just behind me now the 747, the British Airways, taking off for the Falkland Islands. And this is the time that we go.
Now, I think that's the third or fourth jumbo into Ascension. It's a new service that's just started. Is this the sign of the future?
That is correct, yes. This is how it's going to happen now. The servicemen will be flown from UK via Ascension Island for the Falkland Islands.
When you did your first tour of duty here at the time of the war, or just after, the island was bristling with Hercules. There are only 2 here now.
Yes, that is all we do now. We have 2 tanker aircraft based here now, and we do 2 schedules a week down to the Falkland Islands with a Hercules freighter.
So the operation's really scaled down?
It has gone down to what it used to be, that is for sure.
What about this base? What sort of changes do you see coming back to it again now? Because you've only been here a couple of weeks, haven't you now?
I've only been here 2 weeks, yes. Quite incredible. We used to live in tents around the area. Even nature has taken over. The place is looking green these days. In my days of 2 years ago, it was quite barren, but lovely. The sun comes up, and it's rather lovely out here. And, of course, we've now got very good accommodations out here for us all.
Listen, I promise you military immunity. In terms of tours, how does this rate as a base to operate from and to work from?
Very good, very good. The accommodations are very good in here. The guys come down for 6 months, and there is no problem here. Yes, of course, you are isolated, as you know. We are quite a long way away from civilization. But it's all right.
You wouldn't believe it looking around, would you?
Not at the moment, no.
Jeff, if you had the choice of going back to Lyneham and being press officer at the time of the Falklands crisis, or being here, which would you choose now?
I would always like to fly, sir.
That's a safe and guarded answer. Thanks very much. (7 a.m. that is, and that's Ascension Island time, and here we are at Wide Awake Airport. Oh, God knows why they call it that, it's a bit early. But normally at this time of the day, the Hercules refuelling fleet would be in the air doing the job they were brought out here to do, and that's refuel the Hercules to enable them to get down to the Falklands. At the height of the crisis, a whole fleet of them were up and down every day. These days, there are just 2 of them left, and they go up maybe twice, maybe 3 times a week. Of course, the jumbo jets that are now starting the service are going to take a lot of work away from the Hercules. The jumbo jets will be carrying the people, the Hercs, just the freight. But these 2 are going to stay, and the refuelling is going to continue. We'll be seeing that in action a little later in this series. Oh, I reckon they call this Ascension Isle because everywhere you go you're ascending. Traveller's Hill, this is called. It's a nice name for agony that I'm going through. They dropped me off the bus at the bottom there, and I've had to walk up to look for my accommodation. Actually, over my shoulder, you can see the accommodation the troops get here. A year ago there was nothing there, and now all these chalets have sprung up. If you think it looks a little bit like a holiday camp, one of them's actually been nicknamed Heidi High. Well, we're a mile inland from the airport. The island's only 4 miles by 4, so it's not a very big place. And would you believe it, we're 7 degrees south of the equator, and this is officially winter until the end of the month. It must be about 85 degrees at the moment, and I'm pretty hot and want some shade. Here it is, home. Portal, it's called, an affectionate term for 4 porter cabins joined together. Oh, it's open. I'm going to cool down. Oh.
Basically, it's a fancy porter cabin which comprises of 2 rooms for the crew members, each room having 2 beds in. And generally we have 3 crew members, so the captain has the room of his own, and the co-pilot and nav share. And then there's all the usual luxuries like wardrobes, bedside tables, and in the centre between the 2 rooms we have a wash area which has a shower unit, a couple of basins and a loo. So basically it's pretty primitive, but you have to make the most of what you've got.
And looking around this mini village, you certainly have made the most of what you've got.
Well, yes, obviously with the amount of time we come down here, we've sort of put out individual touches to the cabin areas. The 2 cabins you see here basically shared by the 24 and 30 squadron tanker crews.
From Lyneham?
From Lyneham, yes. So we've, as you see, built a patio, which is quite useful for the odd barbecue or whatever. Some of the other detachment guys have sort of really personalised their bashes, and they've made them like fortresses with drawbridges and all the fancy decorations around the outside. But it depends really. Those are guys which are down here for longer and have more time to do it.
You call them bashers?
Bashers, yes. It's a name which has been in the forces for many years with various accommodations throughout the world.
Some of them do look a bit bashed about.
Well, obviously, you can see the seats around here. They're all brand spanking new when they came down, and because of the weather, they've deteriorated at a rapid rate of knots. But I think we're doing things to remedy the situation.
Is it a problem when you're not working to find enough to do here?
There are things to do, but the major problem is mobility, really. We have no transport as such, and the island's only small. I mean, it's about 5 miles by 7 miles, but it's getting around, really, so you have to hoof it everywhere you go. But there are things to do, having said that. I mean, there's lots of beaches to visit, and the Green Mountain out the back there, which is well worth a visit. But it's probably a 4-hour round trip if you want to walk around the top. But there are things to do.
How would you rate this as a posting?
I wouldn't rate it terribly highly. I'm sure there are worse places, Stanley being one probably. I think I prefer to be here for 2 weeks than Stanley for 2 weeks, but having said that, there are better places to be as well.
They call this the Green Mountain, and I tell you, it didn't take long to think up a name, because this is the only place on Ascension where you'll actually find greenery. Hundreds of feet up in the air is the only fertile soil on the whole of this volcanic island, and John Abrams, I reckon, would love that sort of stuff. I'm going to let John, our cameraman, show you the view we're getting from up here now, as we pan around, looking down over Ascension, over the barren bits, towards the airfield below us. The sea beyond is the South Atlantic, beyond that is Africa. You're looking left, I'm looking right, because that's where we're heading next. 3,500 miles to the Falklands. How about 1 week, because we're leaving on Sunday? Oh, I see. That's coming on. And it has to go like that. There we are. Gentlemen, I know they've got a swimming pool here, because I've just seen it, but was I hallucinating, or were you carrying golf clubs?
Golf clubs, yes.
Where's the golf course?
There was 2 golf courses on the island. One is at One Boat, which has 18 holes, and one in Georgetown, which is 9 holes, but the one in Georgetown suffered from the last downpour, and that's unusable at the moment.
It does tend to rain a lot here.
I've never seen it.
No, I've never seen it.
We've seen the odd shower.
That's all.
Yeah. We've had 2 downpours in the last... We've had one this year and one in February '84. And this is why you can see the construction of the dikes and ravines that they're trying to take the water away before it hits the camp again.
We've seen nothing but volcanic rock, so you're telling me there really is grass on this island?
No, it's a volcanic rock golf course.
This is like the golf course. Yes, this is a pretty good fairway, actually.
Is it easier to get a hole-in-one on a volcanic rock golf course?
It's impossible. It's just as easy as it is at home.
Well, good luck to you anyway.
Okay, fine.
Well, I'm here to wrap up 845 Squadron's part in Ascension Island, if you like. We've been operating 3 Wessex helicopters here for about 2.5 years, and our main job has been to move the passengers that come down on the aircraft from UK onto ships out in the bay, and they then go down to the Falkland Islands and vice versa.
So the wide-bodied jets that are putting Lyneham out of a job are putting you out of a job too?
Absolutely, yes.
Well, the last Wessex is here. What's happening to it?
Well, that's going to stay here until about August, towards the end of August, and then we hope there's a spare deck coming up from down south, and she can go home in relative comfort.
You're going home before me. When?
I'm going home tomorrow morning, actually.
Have a good journey.
Thank you very much.
Don't have any dates. Ah, more people have arrived.
Can I ask you, sir, does it mean now then that after 3 years the Hercules has finished its operation in the South Atlantic?
No, it hasn't finished. It's finished carrying passengers. But there's still a commitment to carry the freight that cannot be put into the wide-bodied jets, which means that we have to fly 2 air bridges a week in the way we have always done with tanker support.
To what extent has the Hercules force been reduced now?
We now here, as you see, have 2 tankers which support a freighter which comes through from Lyneham. The freighters are no longer resident, whereas before they were. So our scale of activity has diminished from about 5 bridges a week to, as I've indicated, 2.
Are we going to reach a situation where the Hercules are no longer required? And if so, what are you going to use in its place?
The concept for the long-term support of the Falklands was way back in 1982 based upon TriStars purchased from British Airways and then to be converted by the Royal Air Force into tanker cum freighters. Those aircraft will be available in the next year or so, and we will then rely solely on them. However, between now and then, we still have to rely upon a mixture of wide-bodied civilian aircraft or unconverted Royal Air Force aircraft and the Hercules. Once we have the converted TriStars, the role of the Hercules on the air bridge will be complete. Nevertheless, there is every likelihood that it will still be required in the Falklands to support the air defence forces there as tankers.
At the time of the operation to retake the Falklands, little if nothing was heard of the work that both Lyneham and Ascension Island was doing in providing the aircraft to supply men and machinery to the task force. Why was that, and what exactly were they doing?
I think probably there were 2 reasons. One was to deliberately suppress the importance of this base for obvious presentational purposes, and I think the other was to not indicate how complex and initially difficult the tanking operations that we mounted from here were. Clearly it was to our advantage to remain silent on such matters.
You have talked about bridging as being an everyday matter. Now, bridging is this whole complicated process of refueling Hercules in the air. It involves 3 aircraft. It sounds incredibly complicated. What are your feelings about that whole operation, bearing in mind that crews weren't trained? They were just expected to go out and use this new device that the Boffins had come up with.
Well, it wasn't quite like that, but nevertheless, training was concentrated into a far shorter period than it otherwise would have been. And I was most impressed with the way the Hercules crews took to the business of giving and receiving fuel. As a victor man, one had become accustomed to this over the years, and therefore for us it wasn't quite such a complicated matter.
How valuable is the service the Hercules has done over the last 3 years?
Oh, it's absolutely inestimable, really. And it has maintained the link between the UK and the Falklands. The air link, obviously, clearly there has been a sea link, but nevertheless, it was very important to get people and equipment down there quickly, and also equally important for those on the Falklands to realise that they were not isolated at the other end of the earth, and communications were only a few hours away, as opposed to weeks. It's very important that should be seen to apply.
Now, what about, finally, the future of Ascension itself? Because we've talked already about a scaling down of operations for the Hercules. I've met a chap from Yeovilton who is just collecting his last Wessex helicopter to take home. I get the idea that there's an air here of a holiday camp at the end of the season. Is Ascension scaling down this operation, and is there a future for Ascension now?
Yes, I like your concept of a holiday camp. I think it'd probably be better to say that the present situation here reflects an extremely well designed and conceived domestic area which is now reaching the final stages of completion, and it is now able to accommodate the numbers for which it was designed rather than being considerably overcrowded in the more busy period here. That, I think, perhaps explains the holiday camp a bit. But as far as the overall concept of operations here is concerned, we are working to a plan that was conceived in 1982, which I have already alluded to in terms of the RAF converted TriStars. Once the decision was made to go ahead and build Mount Pleasant Airfield, this base had to be modernized and equipped to enable us to support that airfield as a staging post, not only in terms of the day-to-day activities we've spoken of, but also, if necessary, to be able to cope with a rapid reinforcement.
Dave, so what's different about the back of a Hercules now?
Well, in a tanker situation, right, as this is, instead of the ramp and door opening, which is sealed now because you've got a hose drum unit fitted inside, so it's used purely and simply for transferring fuel from this aircraft to another aircraft, anything else.
So what have you got in the end here?
We have inside, we have a hose drum unit, which is, I've got an 80-foot length of hose on it with a basket on, which trails, and which another aircraft, another tanker or any aircraft with a probe can come and take fuel.
Lads, this is the closest I'll ever get to this end of a refuelling hose, because normally this is in the air and we're in the aircraft receiving the fuel. But what happens at this end, and what are all these sort of pretty beads around the outside?
They're just luminous bulbs for the oncoming aircraft, so he can see the basket, and as he brings the nozzle in, the nozzle goes right into the centre, and it pushes the coupling back there, so that the fuel can come along the line and be fed along the line and into the tanker.
What stops this whole thing just waving about wildly in the air?
The dynamic shape of the basket. So it trails, the air catches the basket, and it's being in the shape that it is, it's very stable.
Now, we've seen space shuttles and space capsules sort of docking in space, and it seems to be an incredibly complicated and difficult operation. How long does it take one plane in the air to link up with another Hercules?
Well, it's all down to the experience of the pilot. I mean, once they're trained to do the probing, so once it's trailed, he just brings his aircraft up onto the basket. Depends how straight he is. Could be done in one simple operation.
How long does the transfer take?
All depending on how much fuel that the other aircraft's going to take. So it depends, really. You can't say whether it takes any certain time, but sort of 10 minutes or so, depending on how much fuel it goes.
We've got another depression over here which is moving southwestwards, and although it's going to be clear of the route, you'll probably find some of the cloud affecting RV2 long after it's gone. The sort of stuff that we're expecting on it, this was at midnight. You can see this front, that's the one that's tailing away, and it's a very weak feature indeed, so we can really forget about that one as far as RV2 is concerned. This is the one of significance. The low is under there at the moment, and so that by the time you get to RV2 you'll probably have a fair amount of cloud, but no great thick overcast layers. It should be well broken, and with the possibility of an isolated cumulum, of course, in that thing. A depression in this area just to the east of the route, which is going away southwestwards. This one we can forget about. Another depression, fairly deep, moving southwestwards, which will cross the route, be clear of it, but about the time you get there we'll still have the cloud leaning back over the route near to RV2.
Well, I'm with Don Turner, who's a senior Met man on Ascension, and of course on this island with so many satellite tracking stations they can actually pick up satellite pictures and bring them straight into the briefing room. Don, what picture have we got here?
This is the picture taken only a little while ago by Meteosat, which is a geostationary satellite situated over the equator on the Greenwich Meridian. The area that we're particularly interested in, of course, is the southwest here, the southwest part, with the Ascension Island in, and also the Falkland Isles.
Well, you've blown that up underneath, so let's have a quick look. So, what's weather like for our trip then? We're up here at the moment.
That's right. Here is Ascension. As you go to the southwest, virtually fine conditions, certainly at flying levels, until you start running into the clouds in this area associated with fronts and depressions.
What's it like on the Falklands at the moment?
Down at the Falklands at the moment, an uncommonly high pressure system there, giving quite good conditions. Cold but dry.
Good lad. Is that close enough? I don't get too close to it. People
Right, so we'll go first anyway and take off, and you follow us as soon as possible behind. And then just the usual thing, if you can check in before we actually taxi out, so I know rehearsal.
We'll catch you up today for the RV1. Find you some throttle or shout for a bit of overtake. We're going to the sort of standing off the left-hand side and well clear business.
Okay.
That'll work.
About 190. So
as RV2 goes, we'll plan to plug in about 30 minutes early, or join you 30 minutes early. Plug in at 20 minutes to go, and then review the situation at the start of the bracket.
Sat red, Falklands in position number 3, GDC. On speed, pressure up, and the bleed out check satisfactory. Is sat a 6% control buzz. Check standby, propeller blades. Start position, up and doors. Closed. Hydraulic panel. Set. Parking brake. Is on. Oxygen, test again. Right, my radar's working. Yours okay?
Yeah, mine's fine.
Bargain. Okay, take off to reverse. Captain. I've done already things checked down here. Okay. Take off check, please.
Ground hold on.
Small forward normal.
Normal set.
Trim tabs. Set take off.
Autopilot.
Use off.
Flaps.
Set take off.
Fire controls.
Checked.
Hydraulic pressures.
Checked.
Electrical panel.
Set.
Ice electrical panels.
Set.
And then fuel panel.
Set.
All colour flaps.
Automatic.
Instruments.
Test kit. Good pilot. Engine.
And then overhead altimeter.
Set.
RSS.
Set.
Hydraulic contents.
Checked.
Wrong set of samples.
Check connected.
Doors and hatches.
Test kit. Good pilot. Engine. Low master.
Pressurization.
Set.
Warning lights.
Check out. Clear for takeoff 4164. Check out in. Was
Warning lights.
check captain. Go pilot. Engine. Load.
Seats and harnesses.
Still get go. Engine. Low master back end. One standing on flat end.
And then secure takeoff information.
Okay, 114134. 116134. Okay, 116134.
And track is 2300, just say 33,900, takeoff check.
Approximated. Okay. Follow the power then rolling. Torque 10,000. 15, 16, 17, 18, 12, 11. Rotate. Go. Here's up. The VNO. Alright. 308 the VNO.
Just stay where we are, I think it's probably about right.
No, the aeroplane's not complaining, is it?
Well, it's a little bit quick, but I've never seen this myself. It doesn't seem to take this long when you're doing it, does it?
It doesn't, does it?
Actually, the Victor cocked up there. He came screaming over the top and put himself too far ahead, which is one of the reasons. Yeah, he's trying to be a bit punchy. He's prodding at the moment, John. I don't know whether he's actually in line astern and he's having a go. He just nudged it then and didn't quite make it in. But I'm sure he will next time. He's going to make it good for the camera.
There'll be a nose 235, which is nice and convenient.
Oh, Dick, she's been this time. Just about got it there, hasn't he? Yeah.
4-3, field first.
No, he's got it.
Shell stopped.
Yeah. Okay.
Family.
Run out of power already.
And 4-3, flying again. Confirm you're reclining for the main pump.
Expected his air-to-air attack, can you? No, he went to let it comes out. We'll go well away now.
How's that?
Or not, as going to be. Hercules. Yes. Take a little bit of power off, because you always overtake them when they pop that out. There we are. Stabilising it. Pre-join checks, please.
Pre-join checks, seats and harnesses. Okay, all bar 1 and 4 open. Offload valve switch is open. And the main pump turned off and off, ready for contact.
Winch level. Okay, well there's the red.
900 the TIT, or 950 on the highest. Back to power in hand.
It's flying nicely, isn't it? The old hose.
The power as you approach.
We're clear for contact.
It's a nice steady approach.
Yeah, I'll just ease it up to the old sort of buffet position. We'll have a look at it. And line ourselves up and then go for it. Right, that's coming into the groove now, I reckon. A little bit left.
That's 1,000, 1040, 1050. Oh, sorry, 950.
Okay. Let's try to go from there. Okay.
Yep.
Let's go.
Looks good. Steady. 1030. Up, steady. Left 1040. Left. Steady. Steady. Down. Steady. Contact. Nice one. Green light.
For your flows.
Nice position there. That's good for enough. Very nice. You got the message out the back?
We're filming it.
Is that better? You got it? Come on. 4-3, that's much better. If you could leave it there for just a little while longer.
Yes. Thank you.
Your weight's coming on now.
Yeah, you should be calling 20 in a couple of seconds.
Yeah. Feel it, sir.
25.
Port 5 degrees. Okay.
We're up to about 59,000 now.
Right.
You got 5 left on it at the moment.
Go for the works.
That's nice for it. Okay. Nice and steady.
And we can afford to come out whenever you want then. Okay, Tony, we're withdrawing. Thanks so much.
4-3 Hotel Romeo, we're withdrawing this time. That's a nice rate of withdrawal. Amber light.
Still solid.
Roger. 4-3 Hotel Romeo, clear start. 5 right.
Just 28,800. 0 left right. 50 miles to run.
8, thanks. Okay. 5 right still. Wings level, 5 left. 10 left.
Okay, anytime you like, you clear brake and rejoin on my starboard.
Okay then, if you'd like to go accelerate past me, I'll go underneath.
Okay, alright then, off we go.
nice clean aircraft, Ed.
Yeah, we washed it back in the clouds. We'll clear off to the starboard. We'll clear on our climb. Thanks so much for your fuel. That was nice and smooth.
Okay, anyway, have a nice trip down there, and for you Maggie Thatcher fans, I've got a short burst of music for you.
Okay. And, what's your arm? It's a music job. Alright, you can have your right now.
Okay, and just one more short message for the navigator.
And loaded, Captain. Yeah. For the boys while they've got their films going, if you pass them a message, you know, thanks very much and bye-bye or something of the ilk. Oh, we've done that. You've done it, okay. I don't know, seems they might have missed it.
Looking back at our refuelling, that was a hole-in-one. Is it always as easy as that?
Well, no. I mean, it's lucky to get it first time, to be honest.
A little earlier, we saw the first tanker fueling the second tanker. I've got a feeling that hasn't been filmed before.
I don't think so, not down here anyway. Normally we have a camera crew in either one of the other primary airplanes, in fact. But actually filming the first rendezvous from a third party, I think it's probably unique, certainly down here, actually on operational business, as it were, as opposed to perhaps playing around. Certainly I've never known a press team take a picture of it.
Well, the Victor and the other Hercules have now left us, and we're completely alone. Just how alone are we?
Well, we're looking at another 6 hours flying to where we're going. And where's the nearest airfield at the minute in terms of hours of flying away?
It's Rio de Janeiro.
Okay, Rio de Janeiro's about 4 hours flying away at the minute, so we're in the middle of nothing.
And I, certainly looking down, haven't seen a single ship cross this bit of sea.
No, you don't see many, to be honest, and there isn't a lot down here. I mean, there's not a lot of places for them to go. I suspect there's the odd ship goes between South America and South Africa-ish, but I mean, the chances of actually meeting it would be thousands and millions to one, really.
It really is up to you and your crew to ensure that you get to the Falklands. There's no ground help, and indeed I think there is a radio silence, isn't there?
In part, yeah, they give us weather on and as to when they can get it basis, and they transmit it, but sometimes it's not very accurate. It's a bit out of date, purely by virtue of the fact that communications in South America are not very good. And the Stanley weather is updated every hour, which is a great comfort to us because the weather down there changes fairly often. We make an ops normal call as and when we can get it through, ideally every hour. And our tankers, they pass sort of standard messages when they've completed fuel transfers.
When you reach the Stanley area, I understand you will be challenged from the ground. They'll want to know who you are.
Yeah, they have a thing called the FIPS, Falkland Island Protection Zone, which goes out to a couple of 100 miles or so round the Falkland Islands, and anything going in there is liable to be intercepted by the air defence people, and the radar units down there could watch on the top of the mountains and see what's coming. We try and not cause them alarm by wearing the right squawks on our IFF. Secondary radar response is correct, and we have a book of codes that we might or might not have to use to work on the old challenge and response business.
But if you're accepted and identified, you can then make your landing, and that's the end of the journey.
Yeah.
Now that's a journey that's taken 13 hours, and I know if you're unlucky and there's bad weather over the Falklands, sometimes you have to just turn around and come back again.
Well, the way that tends to work is it's changed over the years. When it started off, we carried internal fuel tanks. When I was doing my bit as a co-pilot when it all started, and with the internal fuel, which is an extra £14,000, you go all the way down and all the way back to Ascension Island, and that did happen. But since they put in things like radar there and landing lights and stuff like that, you normally at least have a shot at getting in which case we divert to the mainland South America, which is basically an emergency because we can't land anywhere else. It's a last-ditch effort. For operational reasons, we work out a thing called a refuel point of no return, which today is sort of 9.5 hours from Ascension. So up to 9.5, 9.75 hours out, we could actually turn around and go back for 9 hours.
It would make a long journey. Now look, conditions in the hold are pretty cramped for us, but they're not much better for you. There are 5 of you working in a very small area here. Is it, well, you're obviously used to it now, but was it difficult to come to terms with such a long time in such a small, confined space?
I'm not sure you ever get used to it, to be honest. This leg, in fact, is not too bad at all. I mean, we've been going since, what, 4:30 or so this morning. Of course, 6:45 we had transport, so yeah, since about 5:30. And everyone seems fairly sort of awake and interested, because it's a normal working day, isn't it? Up at breakfast time and finish at dinner time. It's the night sort of legs of a similar nature. If you take off at dinner time and fly to breakfast time, the body just switches on. It dies on you.
Do you sometimes feel a bit like a bus driver doing the same route over and over again?
Well, there is that element of it, but certainly it's a bit of a kick to fly what must be one of the longest sea tracks between civilised bits in the world. I mean, obviously there's land tracks that are bigger, but between 2 bits of civilization, this must be one of the long sea tracks going. And without working it all out from an atlas or whatever, just put it into perspective, the leg from Ascension to Stanley is about 800 miles longer than Auckland to Stanley, which is in New Zealand. And if you imagine New Zealand, we always think that's the other side of the world. So that sort of puts it in some sort of perspective. Ascension is a great place to have, but it's not actually that close to anywhere else.
I quite understand, you know, if you said, here, what's he doing in the back of the Arctic on top of a pallet load of freight? Because after all, the back of a Hercules aircraft is very much the same. It is just a freight holder. And I think you'll agree we've got a fair bit in here. Well, altogether, there are 8 of us squeezed in around it. That's the 5 flying crew and us 3 from HTV. And I think you'll agree there's not too much room around. Someone told me, though, they've crammed in as many as 60 people around these freight pallets, and I tell you, once you're strapped down in a crowd that big, you stay there for the whole of the 13 hours. This place is just 41 feet long, it's about 10 feet wide and 9 feet high, and I tell you, it's nothing like a seat on an aircraft when you're going off in your holes and you've got comfy seats and nice windows to look through. The back of this Hercules is all you see for a 13-hour journey.
We'll see you okay, if you want to come left on to about 248, please. I'll see the lights are where the coast stars are, I think. Could be, yeah. Good little tip, when you get closer and just on the headland, there's a lighthouse just to make sure you've got the right headland, because they do look quite the same. Okay, Yeah, you got 0 drift.
Okay, what I do now is start gently easing down to make 600 feet as I hit the little bit of land there. Maybe just a little bit less than 600 acres near headwind. Pre-landing checks, please. Flaps 50.
Sorry, second. Landing gear, ears down, indicator straight. Nose wheel, centre to right panel. Is set. Hydraulic panel, direct and set, altimeters.
Okay, going through 950.
Checks with the code, and the nav, anti-skid test, checked. Radar, stand by the front, and at the back, synchronized master.
Well, it's almost light. So sort of, we hold it about 550 feet today, and then we start a nice final sort of a normal sort of position. Normally you wouldn't be popping the gear, the flaps down here, but since it's this oil field business, I'm a little bit sceptical about it. It's 5 miles, that's good. Try to give me an arse of it, still make 2010. Give you a good chance to have a look round. The town is beyond the lights there, out in the distance on the left of that water. Yeah. That's what we call it. That's what they used to do, is the harbour approach was a teardrop over there to get back in on 0 to 8. But they've got PA on both runways now.
Yeah. You want me to cancel when that white goes off?
Yeah, it'll go off at 15 feet, so if you just cancel it as soon as it does.
Okay.
We'll take down the flap as soon as you get the speed, please.
Travelling.
0 drift, please. 1 port.
Okay. 100 flap.
Nice.
sunshine on Ascension, the temperature nearly 80 degrees tonight. We're on the Falklands. Here we are at RAF Stanley, and the temperature, I'm told, is 0 degrees centigrade. The time locally is 4:20. As you can see, it's almost dark. So we'll try and show you the island from the air during the light tomorrow. Bill, we've heard an awful lot about you on Ascension, and that day when you got in against all the odds. What exactly happened then?
Well, we got back to Ascension with the weather forecast to be good, and on arrival it turned out to be the worst storm ever known in that area. And so we made several attempts to land there with the fuel running quite low, and we were seriously considering ditching. And on the final attempt, the sixth attempt, we saw one light, and we thought we'll have a go on that, because the lights had gone with the rain, you see, the airfield lighting that is. Saw one light, and thought we'll have a try on that one. Visibility was down to about 200 yards, I suppose. And lo and behold, the runway appeared right about 10 feet in front of us. Because we're flying below the level of the runway at the time. As you know, the runway's about 275 feet up, and we were flying at below 300 feet on the indication. So you had to climb a little bit to find it, but it was there.
Now, I would have thought that would put you off flying for life, but here you are, Stanley, still flying.
Well, it's one of those experiences, you know, they come and go. It's greatly exaggerated to some extent.
How does life down here compare with your tour of duty on Ascension?
It's difficult to say. It's, I find flying down here is quite exhilarating. I wouldn't have missed it for the world, but having said that, I'd much rather be home.
What's the worst thing about it and the best thing about it?
The worst thing down here? I think the standard of life, you know, we're pretty basic. It's almost MASH conditions, you know, as you can see around here. But the spirit is there. It's absolutely superb. I mean, people do anything you ask, and likewise you have to work back to reciprocate on that, but spirit is superb. You don't find that at home to the same extent.
We've noticed that elsewhere, certainly on Ascension, things are getting back to normal in a way. The island has been prepared to serve its role, but now things are settling down. How does that compare with the Falklands at the moment? I mean, you still seem to be pretty busy.
Well, they are what they call normalising, and originally, a year ago down here, everything was done by barter. You know, you give me this and I'll give you that. Give us a plank of wood type thing to put the roof on with, and we'll give you a flight in the Hercules or 5 bars of chocolate or whatever. Slowly we're getting back to the Air Force proper. It's inevitable, I suppose, really, but I'm sad to see it happen.
John, on our journey, this is the end of the line. We finally got to the other end of the line and connection. Now, what are the lads here involved in doing?
We've got two main commitments. The first commitment is to support the Phantom F4s that are our air defence force here. And our second commitment is to maintain surveillance of the FIPS, which is the Falkland Island Protection Zone, around 150 miles around these islands.
Sam, can I just say, looking around, and we've only just got here, that maybe things are more luxurious up aloft in the Hercules than they are down here on the ground?
Sometimes, yes. We certainly make it as best as possible for ourselves, anyway.
It's a pretty makeshift arrangement. How did you get all this together?
A lot of it was by bartering and, you know, exchanges. People go flying. Likewise, later on, a lump of wood or some corrugated iron would appear. But it was just off our own backs. Everybody went around the station getting as many pieces as possible, and with the conditions that we've got weather-wise and that, it gave you an incentive to build up a good base unit.
I take it life here is a lot different to life back in Wiltshire.
Yes, it's very exciting, and it's a completely different way of life. It's you're always on the go, and it's just unusual flying and everything. It really does make it rewarding. It gets tiring though, sometimes.
Lads, we've been talking to Lyneham engineers on Ascension, and they are labouring under a hot sun. What do you labour under down here on the Falklands?
Wind mainly, I think. Yeah, wind and snow, rain, sleet, anything that comes our way, you know.
What are conditions like generally?
Well, the conditions are pretty basic, but the spirit's good, and we just accept that we're down here a long way from home, and that's the conditions we're going to get. We've got the best we possibly can here, and we do a lot for ourselves to make it more comfortable.
What are the sort of problems you have to deal with on the ground?
At the moment, the biggest problem is snow and ice, And other problems, not a lot really. We can get by them quite easily.
Are there big problems with aircraft grounded for mechanical reasons?
Well, not really. There's more problems back at Lyneham, I think, because we've got more aircraft. But here you get to know the aircraft sort of personally, you know, and they're okay really.
They call it Fat Albert. It's been my experience coming all the way down from Lyneham. It's a pretty good aircraft, the Hercules.
They call it Fat Albert, I think, because of the amount of freight it can carry and the distance it can carry it. It really fills up sometimes to the top.
Do you share this affection for the plane that its pilots and crew have?
Oh yes, it's a great aircraft, and we do a lot of flying with the crews down here ourselves. So yeah, we have a great affection for it. Superb aircraft.
I wonder what you call it when it goes wrong.
Nice name.
It's been a long journey for me to come and stand on the main high street in Port Stanley. It's very early in the morning and I know it's June, but down here being winter, it really is absolutely freezing cold. It's also perhaps amazing for me to think that 3 years ago this week our lads were fighting their way down from those hills to liberate this town. Here there's a chap working on the memorial which is going to be commissioned during the week of June the 14th to commemorate that occasion. There's going to be a big march past here. A lot of people are going to remember, I'm sure with pride, the events of the Falklands and Port Stanley 3 years ago.
Yeah, we're just coming up by Goose Green. In the harbour at Goose Green, you'll see an Argentinian NTB.
I think the cemetery's over here on the right somewhere.
Cemetery
We're
is
going right over the top of
cemetery
it.
is bang on the nose. Suggests if you went right a little bit, they could take pictures of it.
We're drifting right fairly rapidly at the moment.
From here to San Carlos? Okay, from here up to San Carlos, yeah.
Heading, please.
Fly along the ridge line.
Okay, I don't want to climb along the ridge line because it's going to be a
Yeah,
hill.
you want to aim for the end point. Lucky the visor's quite nice, you've got a nice background view.
Yeah.
Lafonia, the great flat nothing. Yep. Just coming up to Cantera House on the nose.
Rangers.
Yeah, 1,000 feet. You must have about 10 star drift on by the look of it out of the window.
Yeah, it's a fair man.
Doppler's not doppling. Right, quiet now. Okay, as you look, the point of land left of the nose is called Wreck Point. Coming eastbound from that, in other words, going from left to right, you've got Port San Carlos up to the north. The one that's coming towards us here is San Carlos Water. The one out to the right is called San Carlos Water, where you've got the ships. San Carlos.
Try number 2 is a Masters, a heck of a prop being going on.
Shortly coming out into Grantham Sound, which directly joins onto the Falklands Sound.
Rangers.
Yeah.
Puffin 26 airborne. 26 loud and clear to Phipps 1025. Right. 27 loud and clear to Puffin Phipps 1025. 35. United clear to 26. Chinook by nose 4 miles. 800 feet.
Now the second one in trail. It's been cleared, the anti-call's off.
This is 78, you're loud and clear. How many other?
Radio loud and clear also.
Hotel Delta 78, QNH changed. QNH is now 1029 over.
Fine.
He's in contact now. You should push the hose in a few feet, and then the fuel will start to flow. And he'll sit in that position until he's got his allotted amount of fuel, and then drift out, and the hose will come back out with him to the original position. Nice position, Captain. Very nice.
Try and get these black and white ones up to Gene by the 20th.
Oops, sorry about that, gents.
Disconnecting now, dropping back.
2512, you had whiskey, you're clear on the starboard, clear to party, you're okay.
Thanks very much.
Whiskey, that was a 9k refuel. So he might go off with burner in this one. There's a chance.
27, remain in position for a turn about to the right for commencing. Pardon my language.
Pardon, Captain. Oh, there you go. One phantom departing. Yep. There he goes. The other one's well clear.
Can't keep up with you, Bill.
It's quite obvious that the fighters have more power than we have because we can't follow him round in turn.
Sliding behind.
Yeah.
Well, I damn. practice, these guys, aren't they? 255 knots.
Okay, thank you. It's right back slightly, so we don't overtake. Yep. That looks like a nice prod, actually, going ahead now.
What they do is get a stabilised position, and when they're happy with their position relative to the basket, then they put a little bit of power on and just run in with final corrections at the end. Looks like he's running up now.
Yeah, that looks nice.
There he goes, put some power on, just running in.
He's contact.
Good contact. Slightly fast overtake. Good.
And service wind 320 and 20. QFE 1030, QNH 1033, the FIPS now 1024.
Copy that. 1024 now, the FIPS.
Okay, I'll have to can't alter it, obviously.
Rock.
And further design, crash control fine.
15,000 pound of torque, 245 knots. Phantom's doing a switch.
I'll have to go forward now, so we can get them both.
Standing wave again. Hang on a second, Jim.
Call them. Okay, Phantoms, you're clear to brake anytime you wish.
Brake from what's it?
We actually want to go north to let down over the sea, Adrian.
Very nice, guys. And 26, would you like any gas?
It's closing rapidly.
No, we don't need any gas, do we?
We're okay, thanks very much.
Right, thank you very much. See you on.
Okay, just southwest of Teal Inlet. Take us up.
Juliet 44, Juliet 44, this is Byron, over.
Yellow.
Calling me for a radio check, I can hear him
Yeah,
perfectly well.
that's pilot's left, the one you were making. Okay then, Ash, if you can make the heading initially southerly, please. There's nothing out here worth looking at the moment. It's about time we headed off towards Mount Pleasant, I think, and dropped our passengers off. Safety altitude 3,500.
Roger, climbing power please, Inch.
Setting.
Going up.
Forward to come on to 090 now, please, Ashley.
Coming left.
Heading towards south end of Goose Green. Once we coast out, I suggest we try and get visual before we
Okay.
go down. I'd like to start going down, please.
Yeah.
3 years ago, the British government poured men into these islands to free them. Ever since then, they've been pouring money into the islands to secure them. I'm standing on a little portion of quite recently freshly dried concrete. This forms part of Mount Pleasant Airport, and that forms part of a £400 million investment. Now, in our story, we followed the Hercules from Lyneham all the way down here to the Falklands to show its role over the last 3 years in securing and making sure these islands are kept secure. Now, the Hercules behind us is the one we've been flying in this morning, and behind that is the TriStar that, as far as the Falklands is concerned, is going to replace it on the run down. So it's the end of the line for Lyneham, as far as the bridgehead is concerned, though the Hercules is still going to be used a hell of a lot down here on the Falklands. I wish we could show you more of the airport, but they won't let us film it from the air. It's very cold. I'm looking forward to getting back to June in England and a little bit of warmth.